So this video is going to be a little bit different than all of your other ones. You have a worksheet, but it isn't notes because a lot of this is review. Actually, all of it is review, hopefully. So what you're going to do is watch this video. You're going to continue down the form and fill out the 4 questions to check for understanding, and then you're going to work on the worksheet. Instead of it being notes, it's going to kind of be an after the fact. So first we're going to review math vocabulary. You guys all know that finding the average and finding the mean are all the same thing. You're going to add all of the numbers up and then divide by how many numbers that you added. The median, you are going to line all of the numbers up in numerical value. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even if they don't appear that way initially. And then you're going to choose the one that is smack dab in the middle, and that will be your median. After you've lined up your numbers in numerical value, or numerical order, I'm sorry, you may see that there are numbers that occur more than once, especially when you've collected data with these numbers. That's why you would look at them. And the one that occurs the most often is the mode. So if you have a number that occurs 6 times and a number that occurs 7 times, you're going to go with the one that occurs 7 times as your mode. Before we get to this, I want to talk about range. Range is when you line up your numbers in numerical value, or numerical order, I keep saying value, and you subtract the largest and the smallest. So take the biggest one and subtract the smallest from it. So make sure you line up those numbers in numerical order. Largest to smallest, you subtract, and that will give you the range. It's the difference. Okay, so a data table, this is what you're going to make while you're doing an experiment or a lab, and you can create a table on Google Docs, you can use Google Sheets, any of those things will work. Google Sheets kind of works better if we're talking about making them online, just because you can highlight them and create a graph after the fact. So during your lab or experiment, you are making a data table. This includes all of the information, so it's super specific. And then after you're done, you want to summarize your stuff. You don't want to have all that data. You just kind of want to show it in a nice, pretty format. So that's why after you do an experiment, you create a graph. Now, there are different types of graphs based on the type of data that you have collected. Every graph, however, does both have an independent and a dependent variable. So independent, if you are an independent person, you kind of rely on yourself. So this is going to be the thing that independent, I control. Okay, and this is always going to be on the x-axis, which is this one down here. So I'm moving my mouse down here at the bottom. So I control the independent variable. Now, the dependent variable is always on the y-axis, and it depends on this one. Okay, so the dependent variable depends on what I change. So let's take a look at that. So based on what I change, the independent variable, the dependent is going to change. This is a bar graph. This is probably what you're most familiar with. You're going to be using this when you have categories or groups. So like say you go to the zoo and you want to count the amount of giraffes and zebras and elephants. Those are all things. So that is what's called qualitative information or qualitative data. You should have learned this in 7th grade. So it is a quality, it is a category, it's a type like a color. So it's when you're comparing those categories of data. A lot of the time it's like you're counting how much of something. Circle graph you should also be familiar with. This is when you are comparing parts to a whole. So the amount of kids that got A's, B's, C's, and D's, and F's or during a test, you could make a circle graph out of that for your class because it's out of 100% of students, and that is also qualitative. So it's going to be a type or a category that you're going to be putting in there. Okay, this is probably unfamiliar to you, but it should look somewhat like a bar graph. Once again, the independent variable, what I control, this is dependent. This is what depends on what I change. So a histogram looks like a bar graph. However, it's different because obviously the bars are touching one another and it has intervals. So this bar right here is from 60 to 65. Now, this bar is 65 to 70. So it includes all of those values in this height. Okay, 60 to 65 is the height, and 3 would be the frequency. How many are 60 to 65? So when you see an interval, that's a histogram. So this is quantitative. It's a quantity, an amount. So you'll notice when we go back here that feet or height is a measurement. This is something you can measure. It is a number, a quantity. That's why this is quantitative. Okay, and we usually do this with like years or measurements that have intervals. We can also do these with, say, do it with density. So yesterday I gave you a rubber stopper and you measured the volume. You could put the intervals of volume that you found throughout the class into a histogram. Scatter plot, this is what we'll be using in our next lab. It usually happens with 2 separate measurements. So you have in our next lab, mass down here and volume up here. And the dot shows you what the density of the object is. So this is quantitative as well because I said it has 2 measurements, mass, volume. We also call measurements sometimes variables. A line graph. This is used to show a change over time usually. So this would be good if you're showing like your bank account or the stock market. So I get paid at the beginning of the month and then I pay all of my bills and then I have no money and then I get paid again, that sort of thing. So that's why that's what a line graph would be used for. So since this is also based on a numerical value or an amount, this is quantitative or a quantity. So compare how one variable changes in response to another. That's it for today. So make sure you answer that 4-question check for understanding after this video on the Google form. And then do your best to complete the worksheet that was handed out during class. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or Miss B. Have a great day.